Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome if you are joining us today. My guest today is Louise Landau of Ryder Executive Search. So, Louise, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Katie.
Oh, lovely to have you here. So, would you mind starting and just letting everybody know what you do and a little bit about your business?
So, my name is Louise Landau. Ryder Executive Search is my company, and we are an executive search firm that specialises in lean and industrial manufacture for senior level positions in industrial companies.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Now, would you mind, let's go back to, in fact, we were just talking about it, weren't we? You and I first started talking or first met, I think it was actually a year before, might be 2 years back in Jan, was it? 2 years ago?
2 years back in Jan, yeah.
Off the back of COVID, we had a conversation. You were there in Germany, and we had a conversation. And at that point, it was just you in the business, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Or I think at that point I had somebody else had just joined me. I think that was the point when someone else had just joined me, and we were starting to get quite a significant revenue of jobs. And I was struggling with some of the internal processes and looking out in the market for some support.
Yeah, that's right. And so we had the first conversation, and at that point you were like, look, Katie, I literally have just started. I've got this lady, but I need the business to start coming in. And then we continued those conversations. And then a year later, maybe it wasn't even quite a year later, you joined the program. So tell us a bit about why you joined the program, though.
Yeah, so I think up until the point when Kathy joined me, I'd previously worked with freelancers. So I was working with people who were specialists that I knew in the industry, but I hadn't taken someone on full time. And then that was certainly the time when I started taking someone on full time. And in terms of the workload and the product to the client, I think it was of a relatively high standard. But what I hadn't really appreciated was the processes that run behind that. And as you start to increase, our processes were increasingly sloppy. And the reason, and we were just talking about this as well, the reason that I started my own business and I wanted to come out to market was because I do feel there's a great opportunity in headhunting, in executive search, in recruitment generally, to rethink the way that you do your processes and the way that you present, the speed and the customer service that you can deliver. And for that reason, I was quite specific in what I wanted to do and how I wanted it to run. So I really wanted to find a company to work with where I felt that they had a sympathy to that, and that they could, to a certain extent, enable us to deliver the quality that I know I can deliver as an independent consultant.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people could resonate with that because, similar to you, we find a lot of great consultants out there. They've worked for a business, maybe they had that experience, and they know that actually things can be done better. And you're right, it does come down to processes and systems within that organization to make it better, doesn't it? But they have a very clear, defined service offering that they want to deliver. But then it's about, okay, when it's you on your own, you can probably fulfill a certain degree, but then you reach that ceiling, don't you? What were some of the challenges or problems that you were facing, or how did you know that you come to that sort of crunch point of, right, I need to go and get help?
Yeah, absolutely. So I felt there was a point where we were delivering quality work, so we were getting more and more work in terms of referrals, and with the increased volume, obviously I got a full-time person on. I had interim contractors working with me as well, and there was a point when I mean, of course, I've worked with teams before internally, but there's a point where you're running your own businesses where you really need to crystallize those processes. And ultimately, when the revenue keeps coming, and obviously business goes in one way, it goes up or it goes down, then if you haven't got really solid processes, ultimately the quality of the work to the client starts to suffer a little bit. And I think I'd reached that crunch point where I felt I was really overwhelmed. And then when you're running your own business, you have all the additional factors. So you're constantly doing the accounts. And if you live in Germany, you have a very strong relationship with your tax accountant as well, which is an enormous part of running a German business, an enormous and very complex part of running a German business. And then you have all sorts of other additional pulls on your time, marketing and other elements which need to be taken care of in addition to the day-to-day work. And I think when we first met, I remember one of the first things you were like, are you the chief executive officer or are you the chief everything officer? And I was like, oh, wow.
Oh dear.
Right there.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Most entrepreneurs are very efficient. That is the thing. They're very efficient at getting things done, but they get to a point where they just can't create more time. They don't. None of us have that ability. You can always get more money, but you can't create more time. And so, that finite asset in your business and of your time, and it goes back to, okay, where do I most need to invest it? Because in order for the business to grow, the leader has to be able to get back time ultimately.
Yes.
And I think you're right, you kind of hit like a pain line, don't you? And you can't sustain that self grind. I could keep working, but actually you sort of then hit that pain point where it's like, right, now I've got to create systems so that I can do more, and I can, automate and delegate and eliminate, and I can transfer some of those things that I'm doing to other people.
Absolutely.
But you're right, you've got to have a system behind it, because otherwise you've got to take what's in your head and then put that into a system that others can then follow.
Yeah, absolutely.
So talk to us about some of those things that you did. What was some of the first things that you put into place that made a difference for you?
Yeah, so I was having a think about this beforehand, and when I went through all my moments, there are actually so many aha moments that it's really difficult to distill the ones where I feel like, oh wow, this was the critical point, because at the time every single one felt like a really critical point. I was trying to think of three really relevant ones for me, and I thought, well, actually on a personal level, one very relevant one for me, and obviously this is very independent for each person, but I am dyslexic, and that definitely has an effect on the way that I work with other people. And I don't believe until this point that I ever found two systems of working where I can work in my flow, because I think I have always been limited by having to do the activities, which I find very, very frustrating as a dyslexic person. And that's quite misleading, because I think dyslexia can, take many forms. And so people often don't think that I am. But if you really know me, the more you know me, the more you find it very, very obvious that I really struggle with certain activities, and that things like, report writing or even complex email writing, it takes me 3 times as long, and afterwards I have to go and have a lie down because it was so hard for me. Whereas, other activities like talking, for example, Katie, I could do for a very long time without a break.
Well, look, I can relate to that a lot, because I'm too dyslexic, and so I totally understand what you're saying. And for other people listening, I think we kind of ADHD is the other one, isn't it? And let's be honest, a lot of entrepreneurs have ADHD and are dyslexic. It's our superpower. And it is about process, isn't it? And it is about how systems and processes and how we work, because you're right, there's different parts of it. And actually, we know, though, that running a business and putting systems and processes in place is absolutely key, because systems, give us freedom. And, the most successful businesses have the best systems in place. So even knowing that about yourself, but even knowing that about yourself helps, doesn't it? Because when you know, when you know what works and what doesn't work, it's like that classic buying back your time is you actually hire people to buy back your time.
Exactly. So that was one of the key things for me personally, was really to find, like, we're doing finding my flow was really finding where my strengths were in the day and where I can utilize that, and where I'm really taking a long time on things that actually don't really make me very much revenue. And I was really surprised with the amount of time I was wasting on things like, keeping up to date with my emails. It's just really difficult for a dyslexic person. I know that you know this, but that's really hard. And writing back, I mean, after, things that would be very straightforward. So cutting all of that out, getting a PA, and hiring an executive assistant to look after all of that was just one of the biggest reliefs that freed up my time in just an incredible way, to allow me to focus on the more important things where I can actually generate a bit more revenue. So that, I think that was probably one of the biggest aha moments, was understanding where my time's well spent, and then finding various tools as well that can support me. So talking is like using Loom, for example, is probably one of the best things I've ever found. I think it's the most amazing tool I've ever used. So now if I use it, we have it all the time for our communications. And it's the most amazing. I don't know if I need to describe what Loom is for anyone?
No, don't worry.
Otherwise for Loom, I don't want to talk about and do that. But it saved that, for example, has saved the most enormous amount of time for us, by me being able to do that. And then I can literally send off my emails in the morning in about 10 minutes. I mean, I've just taken back 2 hours of my day, which is completely insane. Obviously, for me, another really big one was accounting. Not great. So we got someone to do that, which has been also taken back probably 2 or 3 days a month at least, maybe more. And now obviously accounting is done correctly, invoices are written properly, so basic stuff like that, which just took me a very long time to do. That was like, so getting rid of the administrative part was one enormous, I go chalk that up to point 1. And then point 2 would be creating really strong workflow processes within the team. So this was one of our biggest challenges. And we have sort of delegated our workflow slightly differently, I think, from other organizations, and that's fine. And we had to take some time to write that job description, like where does one responsibility stop and where does the other end? What are the timescales on this? What are the KPIs we deliver on? And how can we start tweaking those KPIs in order to, like, and this is, going on to the whole ratios that we were also talking about before, how can we start tweaking those KPIs in order to create a delivery machine that performs, I would like to say under any circumstances, but to be honest, I think ours is really, really good. I'm so happy with it at the moment. So that I think, and understanding, so that's such a, it's said so lightly, like, oh, then we just delivered a job description and created KPIs and then everything worked really well. Which is just simply not how it went. And that's a really, really, really painstaking work. That is a work of attrition. It takes ages, and it's process management, continuous improvement, really looking at like the minor parts of those workflows to see where we can tweak it. And that, I think, having a total picture on that has probably been something that's come quite recently, actually.
And the thing about that is, though, like you're saying, is it can be simple. Yes, you're right. It goes back to the discipline of, to optimize a machine in your business, we have to understand that we've got to, build it, create it, and then it does need some tweaking and optimizing. And you're right, managing people, managing a business, but there has to be some sort of monitoring process in place. And actually, that's one thing that I think a lot of recruitment businesses, probably most businesses out there, goes back to having systems, are poor at, because if you're good at your job, which you are, and a lot of entrepreneurs just work very much off the back of their own brains and their own, driving force, they don't necessarily need those tight systems in place to monitor them, because they just do it, they JFDI it. But if you've got a team of people, they need clarity on what are the steps I need to take in my job. And as you're saying, everything is a bit like a production line in any business, is it not? It's like, okay, I've done my part of the job. What's your part of the job now? So that the client has this seamless flow. But you're right, it is about the follow-up. It is about the monitoring and the evaluating. But once the process is there, it's easier to sort of have that system, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's starting that process of education as well. And I would say, if I could put a third point in there, I would say, and maybe this is really related to the other 2 points, and I don't, it's not because I'm dyslexic, it's just because of who I am. I have tended to be that person that's worked off my own systems. Nobody's really told me what to do. I created everything in my head, in myself. And that's really unhelpful when transferring that information to other people, when I've got a very clear view of how things should be done and no reasonable way to communicate it to anybody else, and then no reasonable way to educate them with it as well, and to coach them and to make their job feel very purposeful, and to make their as an individual, them to feel very satisfied and ultimately do the best possible role. And I think that's one of the, like, for me, probably the greatest personal achievement is to be able to support other people in a more meaningful, purposeful way to do their job better. And that's probably wouldn't have been possible if I hadn't have been able to understand myself a little better, and then be able to put really fundamental, really crystallize those processes in order to be able to share them with other people as well.
Yeah, great. And yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? That's the beauty of having that system. And we were talking scorecard earlier. I know I'm using language here again, like you said, but I know that you found some of those other systems, haven't you, about how to monitor and evaluate and make those meaningful numbers, or those meaningful conversions mean something. Tell us a bit about how that's supported you.
Yeah, so we had some quite good breakthroughs from the first year to the second year. As soon as we started doing that with the same amount of people, we basically doubled our revenue. And that was simply by, instead of, making a certain amount of placements, we just doubled the amount of placements. So like, it was just really, when you look back at the figures, you're just like, oh yeah, great. Okay, so I did this X many this time, and I then doubled that, and then everything else doubled. Well, obviously, when you look at that kind of information, it's so easy to say, okay, so then what would happen if we strategized this even more? We were more rigorous with our mile deep kind of philosophy of who we are and who we can help. And what if we were more systemized with that, which is really the direction we're going in now. And I think, I can genuinely say I'm so excited. Like, I feel that as a group, we're on a real journey. As a team, we're on an amazing journey at the moment. And I couldn't be happier in terms of the product and the quality of the product that we can deliver at the moment. I feel very confident.
Excellent, excellent. And congratulations on that increase as well. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And how has your personal life improved off the back of this? Tell us what you've seen there.
Yeah, well, I have actually, sorry, I'm just laughing because I've had so much go on in the last couple of weeks, but actually, honestly, I've had more time, I've had more social life, which I think there was a couple of years where I was just constantly sick, and I had zero social life. I think, I looked back over text messages and I was like, oh my God, I sent one text message to my best friend 6 months ago. This is really bad. And that people are just surprised to get a phone call from me, which is, not great when I'm on the phone to other people all the day. So there was definitely a lot of room for improvement in that. And I think that's something I've been really keen to change. And even this year, already since January, we've seen more family and friends on the weekends than I've been able to in the last 3 years. And obviously Corona was a part of that at the beginning, but that's such a win for me to be able to do that, and to be able to function in the week after doing something on the weekend. That would just, right at the beginning, that was just absolutely not a thing. So I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, Yeah, amazing. Oh, that's great, because it's so important, isn't it? You know,
Yeah,
people work so hard, and particularly in, you know, in this day and age, but ultimately we start a business and we want that work-life balance. And often we can really find ourselves in a different situation. So to be able
yeah.
to, yeah, bring that back and bring that balance in is great. And anything else around for you in terms of you know, how you work, or what's benefited you inside of the program, outside of just strategies? Because I know you mentioned other areas that have supported you with some of the other work that, you know, Nikki and I and the team do around mindset, or
Yeah, massive fan.
alternative.
Massive fan. So did such a great session with Nikki earlier today about materializing your beliefs, because I'm really into this whole I very much believe that you are the author of your own destiny. Obviously, you know, there can be mitigating factors in that, but I really believe that you can be. And I think some of the mindset, particularly when you get challenges, and particularly when you get times when, you know, things aren't necessarily going your way, which always happens in recruitment, headhunting, executive search. It's just part of the machinery. And just having, I think there is the two aspects for that: having the ability to talk that through with somebody, or share those occasions with other people who will understand how you're feeling and be in a similar situation, and then having some tools to maybe change that mindset, and having people that are a listening ear to that as well. I think that's been absolutely invaluable.
Right, right. Okay, so if you were in front of somebody else who is at that same point of view, maybe they're feeling like the chief of frigging everything, you know, overwhelmed, frustrated, don't have systems in their business, what would you say to them? What would be your advice?
I would say one of the first things that I remember was invest. Invest to get returns, basically. I think that's probably the first lesson maybe I learned, like, invest to get returns. Like, nothing comes of nothing. Like, you need to put something in to get something back. So don't be scared of that initial investment, because I think it pays dividends in the end. The only other thing is that you've got to be prepared to apply yourself. But I think anyone already doing this is 100% prepared to apply themselves, or they wouldn't be doing it.
Yes, that's a good point. Anyone that starts their own business is
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, quite. Well, Louise, thank you so much for your time today. I've really, as always, I enjoy our conversation. And I really hope, if you're listening to this session with us, that you have walked away with a nugget of gold that you could implement into your business. So if you want the same shifts in your business with less time and energy, if you want simple systems and tactics that will grow your business, create more abundance with less stress and work, then reach out to us. And if you want the plan, the exact plan of what helped Louise to get her business to this level, to double her placements and profits in the last 12 months, just click on the link below and we will show you how we help recruitment businesses leverage more opportunities and placements. We'll give you the full plan. So click below and we would love to support you as well. So Louise, thank you so much.
Thanks,
As
Katie.
always, yeah, brilliant. Such great shares. So thank you very much, and we will see you soon.
Cheers.